I think it's always really daunting until you actually try it. But I think if you're really thinking and you're serious about applying, then your chance is already a lot better than you might have thought.
Hey everyone, my name is Jeremy Luna, and I'm joining you today on the first episode of HearUS, the only podcast hotter than the weather here in Vietnam. And today, with our launch episode, we have a very special guest, Mr. Tùng, who's a 2019 to 2021 Fulbright alumnus. And this is exactly the direction that we're going to take this podcast, talking about exchange programs in the US with real people, real stories, and real experiences. So I'm going to go ahead and let Mr. Tùng introduce himself a little bit.
Thank you for having me. Well, I was an alumnus of the Fulbright program, and I went to Columbia University, and I did a master's in counseling psychology. And 2 fun facts about me. I like cats, and I have a lot of memes on my phone.
Tell me more about what that experience was like going to Columbia University. Were you able to make friends with a lot of the Fulbright alumnus? Or participants, I should say, in this case?
Yeah, so we did have some activities to get to know each other when the school year started. So we had like this huge reception, like dinner reception, which is hosted at Columbia University, by the way.
Wow.
Yeah, so Fulbright hosted it at Columbia. And then we had this huge kind of incoming people from all around the world and some Vietnamese. So they do get people from all the neighboring areas as well. So, you have people from Syracuse also visiting, so that's upstate New York, and then I can't recall any other places, but I'm sure it was a huge crowd and there were a lot of people. Yeah.
Oh, so there are events in Fulbright that they get people from different schools together to do dinners and to just. That's so cool. How often does that happen?
I think once a year.
Once a year?
No. I think that's an underestimate. Yeah. Well, I mean, apart from those kind of reception, I think there would be also all sort of enrichment activities throughout the years. So they would be hosting seminars that you can sign up for as a participant of the Fulbright program.
You used to do math, and you switched into a completely new major. Can you tell me more about that?
So I actually did math throughout my academic careers, if you could call it one, from all the way back then. So I did math in high school, in university, and then I got a master's in math as well. And I think it was sort of like a natural progression for me in terms of what I was good at and what I kind of enjoyed doing in school. But once I graduated and then started working, it just kind of dawned on me that I wanted to do something a bit more humanitarian, a bit more social impact oriented. So that's when I started to deviate a bit from the mathematics track. So I started becoming a teacher here. So I was teaching math in English.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and then on the side I would be starting some community project. Most of them were related to public health and mental health for the community and general audience. So that's where I sort of deviated from math, and then I just kind of kept on doing that for 4 years, a bit more than 4 years before I applied for the Fulbright scholarship. So yeah, it kind of after that it just kind of happened that I was doing a lot in mental health and for the community, and then I thought that maybe it's time to take this a step further, which is when I applied for a Fulbright scholarship.
Wow, so that makes me want to ask, how did you get the committee to fund your Fulbright scholarship? And then in addition to that, get into a prestigious US university, one of the Ivy League schools, with a major of psychology and counseling. Give me your background was in math.
What I tried to really not to sell, but to present was a commitment to a cause. So even though, you started out somewhere else, around your 20s, I think a lot of people can actually kind of resonate to, trying to find yourself in the world, trying to figure out what you really want to do. And sometimes some people get a bit luckier and then found something that they kind of want to stick with. And for me, I think that happened to me, like once I started working, and then I managed to demonstrate like a commitment to it. And then I think it was also the readiness
as someone who is a Fulbrighter, who has gone through the application process successfully, are there any tips that you would share, particularly with the essays and all the rest of the application for our viewers here?
Right. I think my first advice would be to think about it early. I applied back in 2018 to be eligible for the 2019 cycle. And to be able to apply in 2018, I started thinking about it probably back in 2016. Yeah, I needed to start thinking about it, like if that's my end goal, what do I need to get there? What steps do I want? What other things that I need to get done by the time I started really applying. So, at that time, I kind of started looking up, the different requirements. So, so when you apply, you have 2 essays. I think one was a personal statement and another one with the study objective. And then you have to submit a few reference letters. And I think you also have to submit a few other paperwork, but I think that's something you can look it up at the website. And then when it comes to actually writing the essays, I think it's important to make your application package. So, all these different aspects, all these different pieces of the application, you want them to be really cohesive. You want them to really connect and complement each other in order to paint a picture, to tell a story about yourself that you think is the best version that you want to present to the selection committee. For each of the essays, you only have 1,000 words, which is, back in school, I would say that that's quite a lot to write, but once it comes to essays to talk about yourself, it's not a lot, and you really have to make magic happen with it.
Right.
Yeah, so you have to be really concise with what you're writing down. So I think my writing process was that I started writing draft with whatever that came to mind, whatever ideas I thought was really relevant. I think my first draft came out to be around 2.5 thousand words.
Oh, wow.
As compared to the 1,000 word limit. So that was a lot of cutting, and there was a lot of back and forth editing. I asked some friends to help me with editing, people who would really know me and, know what I want to do and what I have been doing. And asked them to help me with the editing. So, there were a lot of back and forth, thinking, wondering, debating whether this should be in, this should be cut and whatnot. And eventually I managed to trim it down to like just under 1,000 words. Yeah. And then lastly, I think is about being yourself. So, be really authentic. Yeah. I mean, well, at least I think that eventually, if you want to make it to the final round, you have to go through a panel interview. And people are going to be reading your application forward and backward. They're going to be reading it 10 times over. So if you are there to talk about a fictional version of yourself, I think people are going to be able to tell. So what I think that people should do is to be really authentic.
I love that. I love all the tips, but particularly that last one when it comes to interviews. It comes across if you're too prepared and you have all the things ready to go, all these stories ready to go, and it's good to be prepared. Sometimes it sounds a little bit less authentic if you're really coached and you might have prepared a perfect answer and it sounds line by line. I think that authenticity bit is really important. Inserting that into your answers, inserting that into the way that you carry yourself in the interview, right? Because that's really what's going to resonate, I think. So that's an incredibly good tip. One of the other things when it comes to the interviews is how do you prepare yourself? That, I think everyone has their own process. Some people do mock interviews, some people speak in front of a mirror, some people work with their friends and have friends come up with questions. But what was that process like for you?
Right. I think, okay, so for me, how I prepare for the interview, I think it was a combination of all of which that you mentioned. I think I was really, really nervous. I gotta say that upfront, yeah. I was really nervous, and I think a lot of people would be. I mean, it's just part of being human, I guess. But anyway, so I tried doing different things. I tried with coming up with a list of a lot of questions. I think that's a tip that I got from some of my predecessors. So, like they were coming up with a list of like 100 questions, and I'm not even making that up. Yeah. So they would be running through all those questions. They would be preparing for those questions and have a scripted answers for all of them. I tried that. I think a lot of people found success with it. I personally did not find it too convincing for me. Like I struggled to really try to write them down and then to try and memorize them. So, but I did try to do some mock interviews with my friends to, first of all, to kind of try to simulate, that environment, even though it's going to be different. And then to have people try to really crack holes into my stories in a way. So, the more that people can find the difficult angles that they can approach my application, my story, the better it is for me, because I would have some time and mental capacity to think of that in advance so that I would not be caught off guard when it comes to the actual panel. And then eventually, I think what helped me the most was that I started doing like a mind map about myself. So, instead of trying to list down all the questions that I can humanly think of, I started with like a huge blank sheet of paper. So it's like an A3 sheet of paper. And then I would just write my name in the middle. And then I start branching out into different aspects of myself. And then for each of the aspects, you will be starting to think, what are the strengths, what are the weaknesses, what have you accomplished, what do you still want to achieve in that aspect and whatnot. And sometimes they would kind of overlap or circle back to each other. So I started, just kind of filling out that mind map, and eventually I have this huge full sheet of paper, and then I just kind of look at it, I look at it every now and then. I look at it every other day to really take that in. So sometimes, when I ask a question, I would just spend a few seconds to think about, to recall that map in my mind, and then I would try to find the angle to answer from there.
Wow.
I think for me, no matter how well I prepared, the actual interview was still really nerve-wracking. But I think the panel was also very accommodating. So, I think I was the first one that they interviewed in the morning. And then when I came in, I think there were 3 people. So one from the Fulbright program in Vietnam, one was a Fulbright alum, and another was someone from the US consulate or the embassy in Hanoi. And they would start off with some icebreakers, like we get that you're probably nervous because we're nervous too. You are here to get to know us as much as we do. So I think and like outside of the interview room, you actually got like a huge set of tea breaks outside, and you can fill yourself with caffeine or sweets, whatever that helps you actually perform in the interview. It was really nerve-wracking, but also I think it was just, you can tell that the program put a lot of effort into really treating the candidates and the applicants right.
Thank you so much for those parting words. Thank you again for taking the time to do this.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.